All right, thanks. So welcome everyone. As Bridget said, I'm the Dean of the College of Global Futures. I'm the Director of the School of Sustainability. Let me explain why. College of Global Futures is ASU's newest college. It was launched on July 1st, and it brought together three existing schools: the School of Sustainability, School for the Future of Innovation and Society, and a new school that we're just standing up called the School of Complex Adaptive Systems. So whereas prior to that, we were a single school college, now we're a three-school college. So my title is slightly different from what Bridget gave. It is true that I am from Canada, although I haven't lived there for almost 25 years, so it's been a long time. For those of you who will be on campus, I just received this today. It's my community of care kit. I don't know if you can see that. And so if I open it up, this is for making sure that people stay safe on campus. I'll show you the contents. Should we do an unveiling? So we have hand sanitizer. That's always good. We have masks that say forks up, masks up. I don't know if you can see that. Here we go, with a little pitchfork on the side. We have wipes. And we have the very important thermometer. So we take our temperature every morning to make sure that we're not running a temperature. So I'm sure that you've all been barraged with multiple emails about how the university is preparing for coming back to campus. And I've been actually amazed by the extraordinary attention to detail. I can tell you that the president has been hosting 2 to 3 meetings every single day for the last 4.5 months to prepare for what's obviously going to be an unusual semester. So we're all set to go. This afternoon, we're going to be doing a training for some of our faculty on the ASU Sync modality. And I think most of you are familiar with that. That's where we're going to be employing Zoom, where some students will be physically present in the classroom, others will be joining online, but the learning will be synchronous, meaning that you'll have an opportunity to interact back and forth, not just with the instructor, but also with the fellow students in the room. And the university has invested resources to upgrade the technology in all classrooms across the university. So it should be better than what we dealt with in the spring, although I will say that people were quite heroic, students and faculty and staff, in making sure that with a very sudden disruption in the way that we normally do things, people were able to adapt quite quickly. An interesting statistic is that we had the highest completion rates in spring in the history of the university. So even though it was disruptive, we still found a way to make sure that everyone was able to complete their courses, and in some cases complete their degrees. So we're ready. We're ready for you, and we're excited to bring you back in whatever modality you might be joining us. Second thing, back to the College of Global Futures, and then I'll open up to questions after that. And just to give you a bit of background of why are we creating this College of Global Futures, you will not find, I think if you do a Google search, you will not find another College of Global Futures anywhere. So once again, we're joining the unique club. We were like that when we started the School of Sustainability in 2006. People said, "School of what? What is that?" Now it's a common word that's used across all sectors: private sector, public, nonprofit. Every day I get ads for jobs in sustainability. So it's now become a very, very common thing. But believe me, when we started, people thought that it was crazy that we'd be creating a degree in sustainability. There's now 2,800 degree programs in North America alone that are related to sustainability. So it's we blazed a trail then, and I think we're going to be blazing a trail now. So the College of Global Futures, it's associated with something that started about 6 months ago called the Global Futures Laboratory. And the Global Futures Laboratory, its mission is to bring together thought leaders, practitioners, students, faculty, staff, partners, in essence, to try to make sure that we create a habitable planet, but also a planet where we can thrive. So very much the message of what sustainability is about. It's not about just keeping going, although that's important, especially given some of the existential issues that we're dealing with in terms of climate change and now the pandemic, but it's also how can we improve conditions, not just for some, but for everyone, and do so in a way that it doesn't undermine life support systems that we all depend on. So where did Global Futures Laboratory come from? Well, the genesis for it was the Global Institute of Sustainability, which was founded in 2004. That was a couple of years after President Michael Crow, who is the current president. He's got to be one of the longest lasting presidents in the country right now. Most university presidents do not stick around for that long. So he's persevered, and that's a really important lesson. If you want to achieve fundamental change, sometimes you just got to stick with it. And so when he created the Institute, that was in 2004, the thinking was similar in that he wanted to bring together the brain power of the university to offer educational opportunities for students so that they could be not just learning about this new and emerging field, but practicing it while they're here, and especially as we unleash all of our amazing students into the world to go do extraordinary things in a variety of different careers. But also to really try to change the notion and idea of what a university's purpose is. And that's not just to create knowledge and educate people, but to really help to formulate in what some people say co-produce knowledge, information, but ultimately things that can be put into practice in the form of solutions. So the idea, the old model of universities producing knowledge and hoping that someone will come along and pick it up and turn it into something useful, President Crow really fought against that old model and said we need to be working with partners from a variety of different sectors to work through not just existing problems, but try to anticipate future problems, and most importantly, how to avoid future problems with that solutions-oriented mindset. So why Global Futures Laboratory? Well, I'm going to talk about Michael Crow again, because this goes back to his days as a PhD student in public policy at Syracuse University a few years ago. And he, while he was there, wrote his dissertation on trying to understand the public policy context of the national labs system in the United States. And if you're from outside of the United States, the national laboratories are scattered all over the country, and a variety of different federal agencies are engaged with them, whether it's Department of Energy, Department of Transportation. And the idea, kind of like what universities do, but with an even stronger mission focus, is to try to bring together really smart people to work on really complex and difficult problems. So in his time as a PhD student, he went around to every single national lab in the country trying to understand why they're doing what they're doing, how it was influencing public policy, how it was being either hindered by current policy frameworks or supported. And the one observation that he took away from that is that there was a lot of really great, smart people, but most of them were focused on building and maintaining weapons of mass destruction, like nuclear bombs. And he thought, is this really the best use of our brain power? So even as a PhD student, he was thinking, could we develop a national laboratory model that was focused on a purpose that was positive, right? That was focused on making things better, not thinking about ways to just destroy ourselves. So he's had this in the back of his mind for some time. And then just a year ago, he brought in, or a year and a half ago, brought in someone named Peter Schlosser, who's the vice provost and vice president for Global Futures, and asked Peter to think through what this laboratory could be. Now, I mentioned national labs, but when we're talking about issues around the planet and sustainability, we need to transcend boundaries. Boundaries are just artificial barriers to a lot of things that we're trying to achieve. So instead of having a national laboratory, he said, let's have a global laboratory. And let's focus not so much on how we build nuclear bombs. Let's not focus on that at all. Let's focus on strategies and ideas and concepts that, back to my original point, can build a habitable future where we can thrive and we can look after the planet. So that's the Global Futures Laboratory. Now, the College of Global Futures, part of its role is to support that big idea for the Global Futures Laboratory. And we do that through the degree programs that we offer, through the research that we offer, and through the partnerships and networks that we've long participated in and hope to develop. So sorry, that's a long-winded background, but I just wanted to give you context. So once again, we're going to be blazing a trail. No one's been there before, but we have been there before, at least conceptually, when we created the School of Sustainability. So all of this is to say, welcome along for what's going to be an extraordinary and fun and interesting and engaging experience. Okay, Bridget, I'm going to send it back to you to moderate.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So would you mind talking about some of the courses that you've taught? I know that you're teaching a study abroad in Malaysia, Singapore in May of 2021.
I know someone else is joining me on that. That happens to be Bridget.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. But there's so many opportunities for our students coming in with study abroad programs, the internships, the careers. I mean, Marsha's on the phone, on the call. Hello, Marsha. Any student questions that you have for Dean Boone along this lines? And if you want to tell us a little bit about your travels, Dean Boone, because especially in your role currently, you've just been all over the world until some borders were shutting down in March.
Yeah, so before I do that, are there any questions from anybody about the new college or the Global Futures Laboratory? And I will add that you are all on mute in case you're trying to talk right now.
By the way, it'd be funny if only staff was asking you questions on that.
We all have questions.
Yes.
Because it's brand new. All right, while you're scribbling down your questions, I will respond to Bridget's request. So study abroad is a really important experience for our students, and I encourage as many of you as possible to participate in that for a number of reasons. One, the college that you now belong to has a G in its title, Global Futures. And for anything that we're working on in sustainability, being able to understand the implications of our actions, behaviors, ideas on global systems and global dynamics is absolutely essential. You take climate change, for instance. What we do in terms of CO2 emissions or how we use energy or even the kind of water that we use and the source that it has, all of this has embedded energy in it, and most likely that energy is being fueled mostly by fossil fuels. So it's going to have an impact atmospherically, and of course atmospheres don't behave according to national borders either, or state borders. We all share the same atmosphere. So even something that you're doing locally will have global implications, because we know that global climate change is obviously one of the most serious things that we have to deal with. So understanding those global dynamics and how it relates to local activity and local actions, I think is a fundamental part of the learning and experience that you should have here. And there's lots of ways to do that. So we can do global modeling of atmospheric dynamics to understand climate change, or we can look at different fuel stocks and the implications that that has for greenhouse gas emissions and so forth. But it's also important to try to understand, and we could go over the core competencies in sustainability, the values and perspectives from people in different parts of the world and the priorities that they have for, first of all, how they might define what's important in life and what kind of future that they want. So looking at the world from a different perspective, I think, is really, really important. And we can do that in a number of ways. So we have a student from India, we have a student from Sri Lanka on the call. And so you're going to learn from the international students that are going to be studying with us, and hopefully vice versa. But we've found that having an opportunity to spend some time out of the country and even out of the state is a real eye-opener for a lot of our students. I've led study abroad programs many times, not to Tatooine yet, Beth, but that's in my future. And sometimes, even though those durations are relatively short, the somewhat startling experience of being in a different cultural context, different political context, really opens the mind. It's really, it's incredible to watch happen. And when we talk to students afterwards, and I talk to alumni all the time, when I ask them what were the really life-changing parts of your time with us, they'll mention a number of things, but one of them that almost always comes up is study abroad. So we've had a very robust study abroad program in place for, gosh, I don't know, 9-10 years. And the faculty are fully committed to this. The thing with study abroad for the School of Sustainability is that we always focus on not just going and traveling somewhere, but we want to use that as an opportunity to think through solutions, often working with local universities or local community organizations to try to figure out, well, what is it that we could work on together so that we learn from one another. Yes, I will be leading a study abroad experience in Singapore and Malaysia next spring. We were supposed to be there in May, but the pandemic happened. And that study abroad experience will focus on, both in Penang and Singapore. These are two, in essence, island states. And in some ways very constrained in terms of their boundaries, but also really important in terms of biodiversity. So Penang has some of the highest biodiversity rates in the world, but also happens to be an area of rapid economic growth. A lot of the big chip manufacturers are there, and other technology companies that are slowly encroaching onto forests that haven't been disturbed to any great degree in 100 million years, and where there's extraordinary biodiversity. So how do you balance that need for economic development, but also look after the richness of biodiversity that provides a lot of ecosystem services to people? So we'll be going there and spending time both in the main city, which is Georgetown on Penang, and then up in an area called the Habitat, which is a biodiversity preserve. Hopefully going with a woman named Meg Lauman, who is one of the leading rainforest canopy experts on the planet. And then in Singapore, it'll be an interesting contrast, because Singapore is often considered to be one of the most sustainable cities on the planet, even though it's also one of the most dense cities on the planet. So we'll be looking at the strategies that they've used around green space, around parks, and other kinds of ecosystem services to maintain a balance between what's obviously incredibly successful country in terms of economic development, but also making sure to preserve things that allow people to lead meaningful and healthy lives.
Thank you. And if anyone has any comments you want to pop into chat, or if you want to just unmute real quick and ask a question about that, and I'll speak slowly, because if not, one of the feedback responses that we get all the time from our students when they've gone through the program or when they're in the program is how accessible Dean Boone is. It's just amazing that you're able to reach out to faculty and other students and student ambassadors, and even our dean. Dean Boone has been known to show up at the residence hall and drop in and have pizza and talk to the kids and see what's going on. Not
uninvited. I just want to let you know. I wait for an invitation. I don't just show up.
That would have been scary. Well, he also is invited to the summer camps that we've had, except for this summer, of course, but he comes up to Prescott and plays volleyball with the students. It's something where you have a chance to be interacting with someone who's on the global stage for sustainability. So Dean Boone, do you have any particular student success stories that jump to mind in terms of, the research that's been going on out there and how we're making an impact as a student through internships and, just being able to chat with them about how their courses are going?
Yeah, I mean, when we talk about impact, so I mentioned earlier that the role of the university has always been to generate knowledge, and that's really critical. It's to build those effective partnerships, and it's to provide a rich learning environment for all of you. But when we look at what has the greatest impact and most immediate impact, it's our ability to provide you with the skills, aptitude, knowledge, and experience to unleash you unto the world to do great things. So when we look at impact, the first thing I always point to is what our alumni are doing, and even what our current students are doing in terms of the research that they're conducting with faculty, in terms of the internships that they're working on. We have an amazing internship program, and I don't know if Caroline's on the line. She's not, so maybe Marsha, I'll ask you to talk about that in a second. And then just unexpected results. So back to the strangeness of creating something that no one had ever created before. When we created the School of Sustainability, I was told by a number of people, including people here at ASU, that students who got a degree in sustainability would never get a job. And then, and Marsha, you can talk about that too. And then so we said, okay, we sense that there's a change happening and that sustainability is going to be really fundamental across, again, all sectors, not just government, but also nonprofit and corporate sectors. And then when we started collecting the data when students are graduating, guess what? They were getting hired. And now we're in a situation where at least every time I look, it seems like there are more sustainability jobs than we have students to actually fill them. So this has been a very, very rapid growth rate. But the other thing that was surprising is that students were ending up working in fields that we never anticipated. So when we created the school, we thought they'd be working for utility companies or maybe for waste management or water agencies and so forth. And I apologize to those of you who've heard this story many times, but some of our earliest graduates ended up working in the fashion industry, which we thought was very bizarre because they weren't getting a degree in fashion. But now it makes a lot of sense in retrospect, because a lot of those fashion companies and clothing companies are really concerned about sustainability issues, not just because it's the corporate social responsible thing to do, but it's also just a smarter way to run their businesses. So the reason that's important is that we spend a lot of time connecting with alumni, and you will all eventually be alumni. I know it seems strange to hear that now. You'll all eventually be alumni because they provide us with feedback and knowledge so we can make sure that we are educating the next round of students in a way that we're preparing you for those kinds of careers that we never even thought were possible to begin with. So Marcia, you want to talk a little bit about internships and career services?
Yes, when it comes to internships and full-time jobs, yes, I must add that there are definitely a lot more opportunities than we do have students. And if you look at if you just research and look at some of the data when it comes to employers looking to hire, and I want to say more specifically, what I'm familiar with is from the School of Sustainability, but I think it's very similar to what our programs are in the College of Global Futures, is the fact that a lot of organizations are finding that they're going across disciplines, across industries. For example, some companies that typically might look specifically at engineering majors are now looking at sustainability students and will quite naturally come into the College of Global Futures just because of the work we're doing and the research that we're doing. So it's very promising as far as the growth of where we're going in regards to employers. It's going to make my job even much more difficult with employer relations in a good way. This is going to be a good problem, but the growth is extremely promising. I'm very excited. And I will even say this much, even with the pandemic, maybe about a month ago, I was really having a hard time finding some opportunities just because some companies were kind of limiting their hiring process. But in the past 2-3 weeks, I am overwhelmed with a lot of job opportunities that are being posted across employers, and it's exciting for me. I just can't pump out enough, or we can't pump out enough students. So share our program with your friends. Know that there's opportunities that are growing and they're coming to ASU and they're looking our way to hire.
Thanks very much, Marcia. Any questions to Marcia? If you go to LinkedIn and type in sustainability, you're going to find tons of jobs. If any of you wants to work for Facebook, or I don't know, it's not as popular as it once was, or Amazon, there's a bunch of sustainability, Microsoft, there's a bunch of jobs out there now with sustainability in the title. This wasn't so much the case when we first started. So it's now become a lot more normed.
Dean Boone, I know we're butting up against a half hour, but I'm taking a look at the chat here. Had a question from one of our guests about the new sustainability building. So I've put a link there to the current ISTB 7 and the webcam, but maybe you could share with us, why is this more than a building, and maybe a little more?
Sure. So for those of you who haven't been on campus before, the new building is called ISTB 7. That's a placeholder name. It'll eventually have a different name. So you won't have to remember a number. Let's just put it that way. It will eventually have a name that's probably a little more memorable. And it's right at the corner of University and Row, which is the eastern gateway to the Tempe campus. And this building will house the School of Sustainability, the Global Futures Laboratory, and the Institute for Human Origins. And the theme for the Institute of Human Origins, by the way, really interesting organization. They used to be based in San Francisco. They moved to ASU about 20 years ago. And the key individual there is Don Johansson. He was on the team with Richard Leakey that found Lucy, one of the early hominids. There's actually a plaster cast that will be going up in the building. So the theme of the building is all about the Anthropocene. And the Anthropocene is a term that's been developed to try to describe how human beings have become, in essence, as powerful as geological forces of the past in shaping the planet. So we used to talk about the Holocene and Pleistocene. and everything else. And those changes to the planet were forced largely by whether it was glaciation or if it was by geological forces like plate tectonics, because human beings have become so impactful on the way that the planet functions. The Anthropocene is a word that tries to capture just how powerful we've become, for good and for bad. And so the building starts with the human origins, comes down to the present, so we'll be engaging the humanities and the social sciences in that facility as well. And then most importantly, focusing on the future. This building will be LEED Platinum. It will have a central courtyard area where we'll have an opportunity to present a variety of different activities that are going on within the university, again, stemming from the arts and the sciences through engineering, technology, everything. About half of it will be laboratory space, which I'm very thankful for, because we've always lacked or had difficulty getting laboratory space here in Wrigley Hall. There isn't any, so we've had to scramble around campus to facilitate that. We will now have labs in the building that will not only allow us to do research, including undergraduate research, but also for teaching. The shell of the building will actually, it looks like a kind of an accordion texture. And that's a biomimetic, meaning we're using biomimicry principles and building that into the building, much like the spines of a saguaro cactus. And for those of you who aren't from Arizona, saguaro cactus is that one that you always see when everyone's trying to depict Arizona in any parts of the world, right? With the cactus with a couple of the arms sticking up. The architects are using that not just because it looks cool, but it actually makes the building cooler. We'll be using things like chilled beams, which we've used in some of our other buildings as well, so that vastly reduces the amount of HVAC that we have to use. So not only will it be a spectacular building to learn and to do research and to convene, but it's also meant to represent the sustainability principles that are really important to ASU and the president. By the way, if you look up Times Higher Education, ASU was ranked in that sustainability ranking that just came out this year as, I think, the 5th in the world and the 1st in the United States. And we managed to get to carbon neutral 6 years before we intended to. So again, if you're not familiar with ASU, it's an institution that not only talks about sustainability, but it practices it. Same thing with fair trade. So I think we're the only fair trade university in the country. So there's a number of principles that you'd be learning about in the school that the whole university actually undertakes and participates in.
And Dean Boone, there was a question in the chat do you know if Professor Michael Barton's connected with our new adventures in the new building?
Yes, he is. So Michael Barton will be part of the School of Complex Adaptive Systems. So that's the 3rd school that's just getting launched right now. He'll be working very closely with the new team there to help stand up new Masters of Science in Complex Adaptive Systems.
All right, well, we have technically gone a little over time. Thank you, Dean Boone, for staying with us. Do we have any last burning questions that you want to ask Professor Dean Boone before we thank him and wish him well for the rest of the day?
They don't have to be burning. They can be simmering.
Some of the students are calling in from Arizona, so it's a burning question.
Yeah, true. And India and Sri Lanka, not so cool there either.
No.
Right.
All right, well, thank you so much for your time, and thank you for always being so accessible for us. We're looking forward to hearing you again during the welcome ceremonies that we'll all be having pretty soon. Gosh, that's what, a week or 2 away now. So yep. We'll look forward to connecting with you again.
Very good. Well, welcome everyone. Really excited to have you join us in the fall. As I said, by whatever means possible, we're going to make sure that we offer you a really extraordinary experience. And let me just end by saying this, and Beth knows what I'm going to say. Not only do we have amazing faculty and students, but we also have the best staff on campus. And survey after survey shows that the school sustainability student services team is the highest ranked team in the whole university. So you've got a really great group of individuals out here that are are looking to make sure that you get what you need and that you succeed.
And thank you for saying that, because we actually have some of those amazing staff members on the call now. Those of you who want to stay on a little bit longer, our advisors are here with us now. And again, thank you, Dean Boone, for joining us.
All right. Goodbye, everybody.